What is up, you guys? Welcome back to my channel, and if you're new here, just welcome. My name is Gemma Jade, but today we are going to be talking about so much strangeness that the only thing I could think to call this video was Hi Strangeness. I've been experiencing a bit of writer's block trying to find new and interesting things to discuss here on my channel, and while just searching, kind of going through random sites and random notes that I've taken in the past, I decided to take several of the different things that I like to talk about and make one video about it and see what you guys like. So without further ado, let's just jump in. Jason worked on his parents' dairy farm in California in the United States. He was out on the farm working late, or maybe it's early, 3:15 in the morning, when all of a sudden the silence he had become so accustomed to at that time of morning was broken by the sound of muffled voices. These voices seemed to almost have been carried by a breeze to him from behind a nearby barn. It was like kind of like whispery voices, as though people were talking in hushed tones coming from behind this barn. He knew no one should be anywhere near the property, let alone the barn, at this hour, and decided to grab his rifle and patrol the entire farm, the entire thing, for trespassers. He found none. No other human being was anywhere near the property or the barn at all. So, who in the world was whispering, and what was it they were saying? This is also when he realized he couldn't pinpoint exactly where the voices were coming from, except that he had heard them coming from somewhere near this barn. He basically chalked it up to his being so tired from all of the work hours he was putting in, and tried to just move on with his morning chores. This was not very easy for him to do, though, as over and over again, the strange voices and whisperings would start up and stop again. Every time he investigated, Jason could find no intruders or source for the sound at all. Finally, I'm sure after getting up to look so many times, Jason got tired of what he thought was surely a person playing some kind of game or prank on him, and decided to sit on a feed loader inside of the barn to wait for the voices to start up again. He planned on quickly switching on the lights and catching the culprit and finally finding out what in the world was going on and to probably confront whoever this was. Somehow, though, Jason must have passed out or fallen asleep, because the next thing he remembers after sitting on the feed loader, basically in wait for whoever or whatever was making the noises or having the unintelligible conversations, was waking up not in the barn but in a room unfamiliar to him with a door that suddenly appeared directly in front of him. He quickly jumped up and kind of looked around, trying to get a handle on his surroundings. He took a step towards the door to investigate perhaps where he was and then how he had gotten there in the first place. He didn't get very far, however, as almost immediately upon the first step landing, the door burst open and a man wielding a huge knife came charging at him through the door. This man ran directly at Jason with no sound or expression, totally blank, silent, and completely emotionless, and wielding a knife, I might again add. Somehow, mainly he credits this to his good luck, Jason was able to move quickly enough to step out of the way of the attacker and send the guy flying to the floor. The psychotic stranger lay perfectly still, as though he might have been unconscious or even dead, but this was just the beginning of Jason's ordeal that night. As Jason shoved the stranger with his foot, two other doors randomly appeared, basically out of thin air, and from each door stepped a strange entity. From the one door stepped an extremely thin and tall human-shaped entity with the head of a giant crow. From the other door stepped a smaller entity with the body of a man wearing a business suit and whose face was contorted, constantly, quote, smiling and twisting, end quote. The smaller entity with the strange and contorted face grabbed Jason by his wrists, okay? As he did this, its dress shirt fell open to reveal a buzzing and very much turned on circular saw protruding out of its chest. So the thing grabs each wrist and the buttons break, falls off, and there's a literal rotating, turned on, will kill you circular saw coming out of the middle of this entity's chest. All the while, its face is contorted and twisting in these weird, gross faces. This saw seemed to have some kind of strange magnetic energy about it, which pulled Jason towards it. Jason also managed to knock this entity to the ground, and again, immediately upon hitting the ground, just as with the previous knife-wielding attacker, this entity seemed to just lay there and die. The crow-faced entity thing then stepped forward, and this one was a bit more intimidating due to its height and, well, you know, the crow head. It just stood there, looming over Jason and glaring down at him, even though Jason was standing at the time. So this thing was like 9 or 10 feet tall. The entity was like literally that much taller than him. This entity started backing away from Jason though, instead of attacking, very slowly, until it reached the original door it had come through and went back through. The crow entity stepped into the door and vanished, along with the door itself, into the same thin air it had appeared right out of. Jason suddenly jolted upright as if from a dream and found he was still sitting in the feed loader. There were no signs of the entities or the knife-wielding maniac. So obviously, Jason's immediate thought was that the whole thing was just a strange and very real-seeming dream. However, almost right away, Jason saw the red marks on his wrists where he realized that he had actually been grabbed on his wrists. The red marks also hurt really bad and felt just like his wrists had been burned where they were grabbed at, as if the entity's touch was like touching a burning hot oven or something. He looked at his watch and only 5 minutes had passed since he had first sat down on the feed loader awaiting who or whatever was making the original whispering sounds. Could this have all been a hallucination? I don't think so, because that wouldn't explain the burning grab marks on Jason's wrists. Could this have been yet another encounter with entities from an unknown dimension who were looking to abduct a human being from our own 3D world for some horrific purpose? This was my original thought, as well as the first thought of my source material. Could these entities have been some sort of extraterrestrials from a world, planet, or universe which we cannot even fathom with our own human mind? I mean, seriously, guys, what was all of this? Let me know what you think in the comments below. In April of 1992, something happened that I talk about a lot on this channel: an almost vanishing. I truly believe that this witness or victim, however you want to describe this man, was almost abducted on a stretch of road he was driving through in the desolate desert of New Mexico. The witness has never been publicly named, so we will call him Henry. At approximately 11:20 at night, Henry was driving along and saw a very bright white light to his left side along the side of the road. He thought it was weird, but didn't plan on investigating it and just kept on driving straight ahead. All of a sudden, though, he noticed an extremely bright grayish-white cloud of smoke which had stretched across the whole road like some sort of strange wall. Henry just kept on driving, though, and headed straight into this illuminated wall of fog. He was driving a truck and he couldn't see more than an inch in front of him. If you guys don't know this, and I didn't until researching for this video, dense fog is extremely rare and basically unheard of in a desert like this. So finally, Henry decides he needs to investigate. He can't see where he's going. Where is this strange fog that has no business being here in this type of arid climate coming from? Like, what is going on? Apparently, this is when it finally hits him that all of this is very strange and probably shouldn't actually be happening. So he steps out of his vehicle and starts to try and look around. All of a sudden, though, he lost control of his limbs. He became incredibly dizzy as his whole entire body went numb, and Henry fell to the ground. He was completely and totally unable to move a muscle and was obviously terrified. This fog started to kind of cling to him, and he was just lying there, and as he did, two shadowy figures emerged from the darkness, and each one grabbed him by an arm and started dragging him through the smoky fog. Henry could still see despite being unable to move, so he was very aware of everything that was going on around him, and he noticed where these entities were dragging him, and it was towards what he described as a shiny metallic craft which was sitting idly in the nearby desert. Henry said he was brought by these two shadowy figures through some sort of rectangular opening in the side of the craft, not much unlike a door as we would know it, and was placed in a, quote, chair-like device, end quote. This is when the two figures came into full view, illuminated by the lights inside of the craft. They weren't human by any stretch of the imagination, but were approximately 5 foot tall and extremely thin, almost all bones. Again, I'm describing this in human terms, as that's all I can really do. These beings had huge black eyes and oval-shaped heads. Henry then said that some sort of tube device was jammed into his nose, and this device caused an immediate buzzing and stinging, which made him immediately start crying out in pain. Apparently, these beings weren't used to anything like this because his cries startled them and they seemed to be taken aback. It was as if the idea of pain eluded them. Like, they were just shoved this up his nostril and he would just, I don't know, lay there and take it or not fight back. They released him from his chair and literally threw him back outside of the craft, apparently unable to deal with his crying and sobbing and begging for his life. They let him go. He had been pleading for them to let him go. The fog almost immediately melted away and Henry was levitated back to his truck. He was shaking and sobbing and terrified. What the hell happened here to this man? Nobody's ever been able to explain it, and as I said earlier, Henry isn't his real name as his real identity has never been released. Smart guy considering all the stuff we know about the MIB. Am I right? Now let's talk about Granger Taylor. We recently spoke about this case on the After Hour show on Spaced Out Radio. In 1980, Granger Taylor lived with his parents in a rural little town called Duncan on Vancouver Island in Canada. Although he dropped out of high school, Granger was remarkably talented with engineering and mechanics. He had rebuilt a broken down bulldozer. He had also restored an abandoned train he had found in the middle of the woods and a vintage World War II P-40 Kitty Hawk airplane that he managed to bring back to life as good as if it were new and hadn't long ago broken down. Granger was basically a genius, and we all know what comes with that, right? Social awkwardness. He painstakingly and meticulously built a life-size UFO in his backyard. I remember when I saw this on SOR, I was like, what an awesome treehouse. That's what it reminded me of. It was like a house, but it was in the shape of a UFO. Obviously very small, you know. You guys know what I mean. You can look up pictures. It took years, and he used all sorts of junk pieces and parts pell-mell put together. He even used old dishes. Granger had an interest in extraterrestrials and UFOs, which went well beyond the realm of normal human curiosity. He also began to tell friends, family, and really anyone who would listen about his own alleged experiences with beings from other planets and telepathic communication he said he was constantly engaged in with these otherworldly beings. He was described as, quote, hopelessly obsessed, end quote, with all of this, and in not too long, it became the only thing he ever spoke about. He didn't want to ever talk about anything else. He would incessantly read books and try to figure out how their crafts worked and how they were able to come and go the way they did. He had a stove and a bed in the replica craft he had built and would eventually spend all of his time in there. Nobody really knows what he was doing in there, as almost all of the time he was in there by himself and alone. Eventually, he would tell his friends, and again, anyone who would listen, that not only was he in this constant contact with extraterrestrial beings within his own mind, but that he had in fact been invited by these beings to join them on a trip through the cosmos in one of their crafts. On November 29, 1980, Granger Taylor went to have dinner at a diner he regularly frequented. There was a severe storm brewing outside in the town this night, but despite this, he went to the diner anyways and acted as he always had when he was in there. He was friendly and well-mannered, and nothing about him seemed out of the ordinary. It was like any other night where Granger had entered the diner. He wasn't in any kind of fear. He seemingly wasn't under any kind of stress or duress. Aside from the unusually violent storm taking shape in the town, nothing at all about this night seemed to be out of the ordinary. Mass panic did ensue, though, this night because of the gale force winds and most of the electricity in the town being knocked out by them. Granger got through the storm and went home. He left this note for his parents and then walked out of his house, got into his car, and drove off, never to be seen or heard from again. The note, with which he left in his parents' barn and not their main house, read as follows, quote, Dear Mother and Father, I have gone away to walk aboard an alien spaceship as recurring dreams assured a 42-month interstellar voyage to explore the vast universe, then return. I am leaving behind all my possessions to you as I will no longer require the use of any. Please use my instructions in my will as a guide to help. End quote. On the back of this letter, Granger had haphazardly scrawled a map of a place called Waterloo Mountain, which was about 20 miles away from where the Taylors lived. He did indeed leave behind everything he owned, including almost 10 grand in cash for his parents. He never told anyone where he was going on that particular night, and he was never seen or heard from again, as I previously stated. The RCMP launched a massive search for both Granger and his vehicle, but neither was ever found. There are some sources which say his vehicle was found, but they state it as the wrong color, so I find it highly unlikely that it was his. He didn't go out and get his vehicle painted that night and then abandon it or whatever. There was one possible clue as to what had happened to Granger, though, but I couldn't exactly call it conclusive evidence. Some bits of human bone were found approximately 4 miles away from the Taylors' property near a blasting site where dynamite was at some point set off. The main theory, for the people who don't actually believe he went on a trip around the galaxy with some extraterrestrial friends in an actual spaceship, is that Granger had some dynamite in his truck that had accidentally gone off the night of the storm when Granger had disappeared seemingly into thin air. The remains were never conclusively determined to be Granger Taylor's, however, and the mystery still remains as to what happened to him. Our final encounter concerns a man only known as Eddie, and I'm pretty sure that isn't his real name, but who knows? I don't usually use real names on this anyways. Eddie was a pilot when what happened to him did, and here is the alleged account of his experience. Eddie was out one night on what is only described in most source material as, quote, a mission, end quote, and he was approaching Howland Island, which is very near where Amelia Earhart famously vanished. He claims to have seen some strange green fog in front of him, and as he flew directly into it, as it was unavoidable, his equipment in the plane he was piloting started to malfunction. All of his communications with the command post in the outside world in general ceased. As he began to emerge from this strange fog, Eddie was able to communicate with command again and told them he was near an island. The problem was there was no island where he was saying his coordinates were. The island didn't show up on any of his maps or charts, and the command center and people he was in communication with again also had no idea what this island was or why it was even there to begin with. They thought maybe he was confused. I don't know. Eddie landed his jet on this island, which was supposed to have been non-existent, and was approached by a woman he thought was Polynesian. At this point, the command center or base, or whatever you want to call it, was no longer able to get in contact with Eddie. So wherever this island was definitely out of range. This woman allegedly apologized to Eddie and remarked that the island had a bad habit of pulling in planes as it had done his. Eddie stayed on the island and lived there about 6 months. Now, from everything I could gather, I don't think this was his plan or decision. But nobody ever states like why he couldn't just get in his plane and leave. I don't know. He said the inhabitants lived a very simple lifestyle. While all of this was going on, people were out there searching for Eddie where he had last been able to make contact with them. Again, though, there was no island there where Eddie had stated he was about to land his aircraft. Not a single person on the island knew about, or cared about for that matter, the world from which Eddie came. They had no idea of what existed outside of their little island there and seemed to be perfectly content with that. Eddie became severely depressed because he was so homesick, and finally he was told he would be allowed to leave and go back to his old life. So I don't know if they told him he couldn't leave, or I don't know why he wouldn't just leave the minute he was depressed. So there has to be some reason why he wasn't able to leave, but I don't know. I wish I had more info, because that one little piece kind of is driving me crazy. Immediately upon hearing this, Eddie jumped into his jet and took off, putting as much distance between himself and the island as he could and as quickly as possible. He regained the ability to communicate via his radio equipment on board his craft and was found by a fishing boat in the area. As soon as Eddie made contact with this fishing vessel, he looked to see the island become cloaked in the green fog and mist and blink suddenly out of existence in a flash of brilliant white light, as though it had never been there to begin with. Keep in mind, Eddie had lived on that very island for an entire 6 months, so he knew that it had been there, despite what all of the maps and even the people he knew and worked with had told him. So again, I ask in this case, what the hell happened here? Did this man somehow go through a portal or time slip and end up in some sort of alternate reality or dimension? What would have happened had he not been allowed to leave? It's obvious for those of us who believe in Eddie's encounter at least, and I really do believe in it, that the people searching for him could not see the island and therefore never would have found him on their own. Could this have been a lost civilization or extraterrestrials who look like Polynesian human beings? How many other lost pilots have fallen victim to either this particular island or something similar? All of them trapped in some strange parallel universe, unable to leave or contact the world they know and love. I have no idea, and I'm literally getting dizzy just writing this script out and trying to wrap my head around all of this. As some of you know, I say all the time, I would love to get myself into an alternate reality of some sort, but it almost never happens to those of us who wish it. That's all I have for you today, guys. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Please be sure and give this video a big thumbs up. Subscribe if you haven't already, and spread the love by sharing this video. I feel like I went really fast and kind of blew through that, but I guess I always do that. I'm always hopped up on Red Bull. I've got so much work to do, but I appreciate you guys and your patience with me for the last few weeks or so. The fact that you guys genuinely care and have been so incredibly supportive really means so much to me. Please check out the description box for other things that I am doing, other projects I'm working on, and where else you can see me. Saturday and Sunday nights from 11 p.m. to 2 a.m. Eastern Time on Spaced Out Radio for the After Hour Show with Big Willie Townsend, John Hudson, and Thin Lizzie Borden. Links to those live streams will be in the description box, as well as Friday nights from 9 to 11 p.m. on Paranormal Chop Shop with Sunny Conway, Chad Smith, Jake Smith, Papa Willie, Spooky Bear, that's what I call him, and really anyone else who wanders in. Such a chillax and very chill place to come and hang out on a Friday night. And everything else they do over there, go check out the Chad Smith podcast as well. Also, you will find a link to my Wednesday night live stream that I do right here on this channel from 7 to 11 p.m. Eastern time, where I do a 1-card pull intuitive oracle for anyone who comes in and wants one, as long as you're patient and feel like waiting on a list, which usually goes pretty fast because we have an amazing family and community on that particular stream and on my channel in general. Again, thank you guys. Please go and check out MoonBearOracle, which is my other channel that I recently launched and then all of a sudden got hit with like a crap ton of drama. So I'm kind of slowed down, but I'm still pushing forward. I'm going to be doing candle magic, you know, moon phases, a whole bunch of astrology, a whole bunch of astronomy, herb magic, crystals, talking about the consciousness shift and 3D versus 5D, and just, I mean, everything that I could possibly think of that you guys have been trying to talk to me about, that I've been counseling my clients on in the past few months. I'll try to leave that link to MoonBearOracle in the description box, but I've been having a little bit of trouble with that lately, so just type it in, MoonBearOracle. You should see my beautiful face, my beautiful mug here in the profile picture. It's once a month intuitive oracle for each astrological sign, which eventually will be once a week. If you would like a personal intuitive oracle reading from me, please hit me up at moonbearoracle@gmail.com. That's moonbearoracle, all one word, @gmail.com. To donate to the channel, in the description box, you will find links to my PayPal, Patreon, Cash App, my Amazon wish list gift link. Thank you guys so much for all of the gifts you've been sending. It's been truly overwhelming. Just, you know, I really appreciate you guys so much for your gifts, your generosity of spirit, your patience, your loving, kind words towards me. I mean, you guys really, a lot of you have become family, and I absolutely love that. So check out the description box. You'll find a whole bunch of stuff in there. Thank you so much again for checking this out. Thank you so much for going to MoonBearOracle and subscribing. If you have any encounters with the supernatural and or paranormal that you would like for me to make a part of my listener encounter series, please email me at GemmaJadeParanormal@gmail.com, GemmaJadeParanormal@gmail.com, and you can use one or the other emails. Both of them will be in the description box. Be kind to each other. It doesn't cost anything. Also, be kind to yourselves. Don't accept anything less than others being kind to you. Always go in grace. Have your best day. Have your best night. And I will see you guys next time. Bye.